Wonderful. Thank you, Jamaica. And hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight. My name is Day Sun, and I'm the Senior Manager of K-12 Policy at Catalyst, California, and a proud member of the California Partnership. I have the great honor of moderating our reflection panel this evening, and I'd like to welcome our illustrious panelists, starting with Ben Chida. Ben is the Chief Deputy Cabinet Secretary and Senior Advisor for Cradle to Career in the Office of Governor Gavin Newsom. He was the chief architect of 5-year compacts with the University of California and California State University, pledging financial stability in exchange for gains in graduation rates, access, and affordability. Ben has also been guiding the development of a historic statewide data system to follow students through the entire educational pipeline into careers. Ben began his career in education teaching third graders at a public school in New York City for 3 years. Welcome, Ben. Next, I'd like to welcome Linda Darling Hammond, who is the president of the California State Board of Education. Linda is the Charles E. Ducommun Professor of Education Emeritus at Stanford University, where she founded the Stanford Center for Opportunity Policy and Education. She also consults widely with federal, state, and local officials and educators. Linda began her career as a public school teacher and co-founded both a preschool and a public high school. Welcome, Linda. And last, but definitely not least, is Nancy Kim-Portillo. Nancy is the Chief Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction at the California Department of Education. A 26-year educator, Nancy has served across the K-12 sector. She currently leads the Instruction, Measurement and Assessment Branch, Student Achievement and Support Division, the Superintendent Initiatives Office, and the Student Support Services Branch. It has been her life's work to support California students to be socially, emotionally, and academically prepared and empowered to achieve lifelong success. So welcome, Nancy, and welcome to all of you. And so I'm recognizing time. Let's get started with our reflection questions. And so I'm going to pitch it off to Ben and then Linda and Nancy in that order. But the same question for the three of you. What inspired, moved, or excited you about what you heard?
What inspires me most, actually, I'll just point out a sign. There's a sign right behind me that I printed out. It's not a very good sign, but it says, no bullies, no bureaucrats, humans only. And it's because that's really the mantra for our work is we have to really, really center in and focus on the human. And so that's what really inspired me about what everyone was sharing is oftentimes, we use language that's a little bit complex, like chronic absenteeism or social emotional learning or relationship centered. But what we really mean is don't forget about the human. It's the human at the center of the whole thing, the parent, the student, the family, the community. And so what I love is, from my own experience, when I was 14, I had dropped out of high school. And it was really because I didn't feel like I knew anybody. I didn't have a teacher who was, who noticed me, and I didn't really have a sort of network at school. I didn't have a community. Some of the folks mentioned it earlier. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel comfortable. And when I dropped out, my parents didn't know who to ask for help either because they spoke only Japanese. And they were afraid that if they reached out, not only would there be the language barrier, but also they might get prosecuted because I wasn't going to school. So they were like truancy laws and they were worried about that. So again, once again, my parents also felt like the school was not a welcome place for them, a safe place for them. And so they never reached out for help. So really, my story is one of millions of stories. And what I love about what I heard is just people get it. You all get it, which is that this is a human endeavor. We have to center humans and humanity in all of this work. And I love that. And I find it inspiring. So thank you.
And Linda, go ahead. Oh, and I think, Linda, you might be muted.
There I go. Better? I love, just piggybacking on Ben's point about what the human beings who've been in community around this have been designing and developing. So I loved, first of all, that schools of belonging, joy, and opportunity are also schools of curiosity and celebration. You know, people are elaborating on the vision that we have for our schools. I loved when Tanya talked about restorative practices and teachers getting co-teaching time to focus on students, like really bringing the structures to bear that allow that relationship-centered school to emerge. I love the belong circles that Rose talked about, and the fact that there's a professional learning community around belong circles now that's spreading to so many other places. The wellness centers and spaces that Rhonda talked about in Eureka, and how much difference that's making. As well as just simple things like transportation services for kids who want to be in school and can't get to school. And I love the way that Maria, Julio, and Diana talked about removing barriers. As Julio said, the way that parents carry knowledge you cannot learn in school, that you have to have voice and presence and engagement to create that. And the way that Diana talked about the involvement of the CSU system, the county office, all the other organizations, and the fact that 93% of students felt safe and comfortable in school as a result of all this. I think that's, you know, where the kind of rubber meets the road, and so many great examples of what community schools are able to do.
Nancy, go ahead, and thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to just talk with what's sitting in my heart right now that still has me just a little choked up. There were so many pieces, but what's kind of the frog in my throat right now, I think it was the first grader that was a McKinney-Vento student that had maybe 40 to 50 days of absence. And then all of a sudden, just one day after the transportation contract and getting to school. That is transformational for that student. You know, when you're not able to go to school for whatever reason, right? You know, self-decision or, you know, external circumstances, it's very impactful. And so having that young person being able to be a part of their community, be at school, learn, develop, sit, not know that they're missing school, and not like, who's that person? You know, it's belonging. So I just want to say I'm sitting with that, and it's very special to me. So thank you so much for that. And I think thinking about this as well, I'm just very excited to hear about all of the good work that is happening, right? And to Ben's point, similar, you know, as a former McKinney-Vento student, right, and a 9th grade chronically absent dropout student as well, it's very near and dear to my heart, all of the work that you're all doing. You are in the business of life transformation. So I just wanted to thank you all.
So powerful. I'm hearing when we center humanity as been uplifted and think about and change the structures that Linda, you uplifted and called out, we're getting results and transformation, as you speak to, Nancy, for children, for families, and that's real. So appreciate that. I'm going to combine two questions together here in this next one. And so tell us a bit more of what are the actual implications of what we heard for all of us in schools and districts across California. So why does this matter? What does this mean? And then how can we deepen our partnership with you to realize our shared vision for community schools across California? So Linda, would love to start off with you, and then Nancy, and then Ben.
Well, there's two implications that I think come first to mind for me. One is we need to figure out how to share the practices and the learnings and the understandings and the innovations that are coming out of this, because everybody's trying to learn this. This is a new thing across the state. And while there's some schools that are just, you know, galloping ahead, there are others that are, you know, still trying to figure out what is a community school, how do we really make a difference. And so sharing, being very planful and mindful about how to disseminate and share. And I think when you say, how do we deepen our partnership? And I know Nancy agrees with me, and I'm sure Ben does. We need to figure out how to be in communication and a relationship around that sharing and be a partner in the dissemination of the success stories, the bright spots, and the strategies as well as the struggles that people may be going through. The other implication for me is that a lot of what we need to do requires redesigning things inside the school. It's not just adding a health clinic on the margin, or, it's nice to have a wellness room. I think that's a wonderful thing. But in addition to that, we need systems where, kids get longer term relationship with adults. They don't see 15 different adults for different issues, but they have an advisor. They have a long-term relationship, perhaps with a teacher who's looping with them and getting to know the family. There are opportunities for student family teacher conferencing. There are advisory systems in the middle and high schools and teaching teams that share students, things that were not in the factory model that we inherited, that people are inventing one school at a time. We need to figure out how to do that in a more systemic way, and how the state can be helpful in that process, and not holding on to, the relationship uncentered design that we inherited, but really reinforcing the work that's going on.
I'm gonna go ahead and go ahead, Dave.
No, go for it, Nancy.
I'm just gonna add on to what Linda shared. Echoing all of those pieces, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness. It's not like a one size fits all type of transformational, opportunity and approach. And so, again, adding to what Linda shared, I just really appreciate, and I'm thinking about the implication of how to, share this out into our school communities with the intentionality. I think that's the real important word, the intentionality behind a belonging circle, the intentionality behind how to build a community, the intentionality behind those pieces. I think that specific skill set is so important, from young youth all the way into adulthood. So again, just echoing that piece that Linda shared. Thank you.
And I would just add on to all of that and say, especially what Linda was saying around sort of like, we're trying new things here. We're trying to learn and build new things, and then we have to try to systematize and structuralize it. And to us, like, one way I want to think about, or what you all to think about your roles and your work is, yes, of course, you're trying to improve your communities, but also you're helping be policy, I don't know how to describe it, like adventurers or like experimenters. You're at the very cutting edge of what we're trying to do. Basically, the story of policy, as Linda said, was we came up with this factory model of education decades and like a century ago, right? And we've more or less kept going on, and we added a new thing here and added a new thing there. And sure, we added a healthcare component, or we added a new social services system or a social benefit system over the years. But then we never actually pulled it all together in a way that makes sense for students and families. And I think what's remarkable to me is like a lot of us as students went through this. Like, think about your high school experience if you went to high school in America. The high school experience of many of our high schoolers today isn't all that different. And our experiences sucked. And so why are we leaving the same experience for our young people? Why aren't we doing a better job of it? And so I feel like in so many ways, you all are making, in some ways, school unsuck. You're trying to make schools about how do we welcome you? How do we make you feel warm? How do we activate that curiosity? And how do we provoke you into embracing your future and your own agency is the question for us that you all are exploring. And then as policy experimenters or adventurers or, sort of trailblazers, what we need to do is take what you're working on and what's working from what you're doing and then systematize it and make it part of the way that we all do all of our work.
Yes, I love that we're all experimenters together. And I love that you call it, Ben, like it's really ultimately communities too at the forefront. Like they are leading by example. They have the solutions. And when we're intentional, as Nancy, you uplift, intentional and Linda, like you share, we think differently about our systems and we make them centered around these long-term relationships. This is innovative, and that's what's happening in the work we are all collectively leading in relationship with one another in California. So appreciate your reflections there. And yes, and so as our final question, really would love to invite each of you. What are some last thoughts, some final thoughts that you want to leave with us today all across California? And so Nancy, I'm going to give you the mic first, and then Ben, and then we'll finish off with you, Linda.
Sure. I think just a few final thoughts. I think, once a child feels confident, once a child feels as though, as they belong, once they feel loved, the goals are like limitless. They can do so much. Your voices here tonight, and this community will help me, and I think all of us collectively, really drive and think through this work going forward. And I'm just thinking about, I guess, just this community and the power in this community together, and my next steps. And I just wanted to thank you all. It's really helpful for me as I'm kind of like behind the scenes. I'm like, just like papers and office and just those. I'm being very real. Like that's kind of like my day, my months, my years. It's just and so I don't have lots of opportunities to sit like this and just hear and see the work in this capacity at this scale. So I just wanted to thank you for the invitation this evening, and please continue to invite me in person or virtually to any and all things. So thank you.
And I would just add to that and say, my main takeaway I want to leave with everybody is we have to finish the work. We have to finish the work. It's, the Newsom administration has 33 months remaining, as Linda mentioned. Obviously, the work's going to extend far beyond 33 months if we're going to do it right. But we have to finish it is the key, right? And so often in education, we talk about like these heroic people, the heroic student who pulls themselves up from their bootstraps and gets out of blank community and gets to a random whatever university. And then the heroic teacher who, mentored the student and explained. Heroes abound all over the place. But you know what's missing? Are systems that actually empower humans and heroes and actually set us up for success. We haven't done that work. So often we've gotten really, really focused in on celebrating bright spots, raising concerns about, injustice, and, talking about the next idea that might help fix things. But this is a good example. Governor Newsom is all about your work. He loves your work. Your work is the thing that gets him up in the morning. I swear to God, I get texted at like 5 a.m. Linda does too. And it's like, he is thinking about this work and he is proud of the work that you are doing. That's why he put 4.1 billion, so much money behind it. But I also want to critique ourselves, which is at the end of the day, it's one-time funding, right? We need to figure out how do we actually build this into and bake this into the long-term vision of how all schools operate in California. And that's really what I mean by we have to finish the work. 4.1 billion is a pretty solid start, but it's just a start nonetheless, and we have to finish it. Oh, and I'll say, actually, I'll wrap with saying, we need your help. Sorry, I always forget that part too, because it's always like, people always look to us in Sacramento, like, fix that and fix that. I just have to be honest and vulnerable too. Is like, I'm just a human being. I have no clue. Like, this all feels so big to fix. How do we fix this? And so that's all to say, like, I don't know, but you have great partners like Nancy, Linda, and me at the state who are going to be down and hip to hip with you to try to fix it. But that's also why I want to end with saying we need your help too, because at the end of the day, we don't have the answers. We don't have the magic lever that our hand is on. We have to build a movement together, and we have to insist that the status quo is intolerable and it must change now.
And I'm just going to build on what Ben said. We want to know about what's working. We want to know about the things that we should share. We want to know about the things we should disseminate. We also need to know about the things that get in the way, because we're sitting, all of us, in a system that has accrued over this. It's a geological dig of policies to reinforce the factory model school. And the heroes that Ben is talking about, amongst all of the folks that we've been talking with, are the folks who figure out how to either subversively or, through, a variety of organizing strategies, get past those barriers. But we need to know what the barriers are, and we need to be busy fixing those barriers, removing those barriers, in the system itself, so that people can regularly and routinely be able to do the good work that you've described. I interviewed a young man once. I had done a lot of work in redesigning schools, was involved in, I had a privilege of starting a redesigned school myself. And one of the young people I was talking to just said, school should not be mass education. You need love to learn. And I want us to design schools for effective love and caring, so that every child experiences that when they come to school. In this particular community, which is a community that had, a lot of trauma. It was a California community that had once been identified as the murder capital of the country for the number of drive-by shootings and so on. We basically created a space for love and caring. So every day when you came to school, you went to your advisory family with 15 other students, had your breakfast, checked in with the teacher, did social and emotional circles and meditation and all kinds of things. If there was a need, it could be identified right away and you could get help for it. And then you'd go through your day and take your courses, which were hopefully, engaging and project-based and exciting and all that. But then you come back to that family group at the end of the day where you knew you would be experiencing care and belonging. And teachers care. But I know as a high school teacher, I saw 180 kids a day going by 30 at a time in 6 periods. I could not care effectively for the students I wanted to care for. And so I really want us to be thinking about how do we design our schools for effective caring and belonging, so that all of that good effort, all of that goodwill, all of the good ideas that we're hearing about have a way to be actualized for kids every day.
Yes, that is such a powerful note to end on, Linda. I literally got chills, goosebumps when you shared. We need love to learn, and love in this work. It's a labor of love for all of us, to make sure we're building this system for all of our heroes. And so we thank the 3 of you, our 3 heroes, for joining our many other heroes, our students, our families, our community members of the night. So again, thank you for your reflections, and to each of you for your lifetime commitment to children, families, educators, and communities in California. So much appreciation.